All right, I think we're about ready to go here. So, first of all, let me just start by introducing myself and saying thank you for joining the meeting. My name is Scott Heath, and I am the new Vice President of DNR for PCJSL. Um, I'm I'm hoping that we can keep this meeting as short and sweet as possible. So, if you have questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to go ahead and type them into the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll go back and answer everybody's questions. That way, if anybody does not have any questions and they're ready to go, then they can go ahead and take off. So with that being said, we're going to start off with Larry Luckett, who is the referee commissioner for PCJSL. And Larry, take it away.
Thanks, Scott. You can hit that next slide. During the course of recertification this year, which I've accomplished and referees in the process of accomplishing now, Arizona State Referee Administration said, hey, we need to put more emphasis on the 7v7 game and the refereeing that. So one of the things I saw there that was a change what we've been doing in the past 7v7 games for the U9 U10s is when the keeper received the ball before, we said you can't do anything but roll the ball out to your teammates. Okay, now that's changed. The keepers now can basically play it out with their feet. They can't punt it. They still can't do that. They can't do a drop kick, but they put the ball on the floor and they can kick the ball out. So that's something that's changed, and the referees will be briefed on that to make sure that they comply with that when we start the 7v7 stuff late September. So that's a 7v7 change that is, again, high emphasis item this year by the Arizona State Referee Administration. So next slide, please, Scott. IFAB has come up with some law changes, nothing really spectacular. A couple things that are kind of have some minor significance what we do. If this is primarily probably more for the older players, but if your team captain, if you want to identify your team captain with some type of signifying band, it's got to be an arm band, not a shin guard band or a leg band. Okay, if you want to do that at younger ages, that's fine, but it should be an arm band. So team captains must wear the identifying arm band as opposed to put it around your ankle or put around your high in your shin there. So that's law 3 change. Law 4 changes, and I'm going to press the referees on this, making sure this happens, especially for the older kids. The players' equipment has changed now. It says shin guards must be age, I call it suitable. Basically, they need to be appropriate for the age. You can't have a 19-year-old kid playing with, shin guards that are like, made out of cardboard or, 2 inches by 2 inches. That's not affording them a level of safety. So a big emphasis here on players' equipment is the safety. So wear shin guards that are appropriate for your age. Law 14, there's been a change here for the penalty kick. In the past, and then past as in last year, if the keeper encroached, but it had no effect on the outcome of the shot. In other words, the keeper encroached and the ball was kicked by the kicker either wide right, wide left, or over the top. We did not sanction that and give the kick over. It's just like, okay, you missed it. Too bad. Same thing now applies to all the other players out there, with the exception of the kicker, obviously, but any other player on the team, offensive or defensive, that encroaches into the penalty area. If they encroach into the penalty area and they don't have an outcome or basically have an influence on the outcome of the kick, then nothing's going to happen. So, for example, the attacking player, teammate, comes into the area, but the ball's kicked clearly into the goal. That had nothing to do with it, so we're going to let that goal stand. The defending team comes into in the goal area, okay, in the penalty area, I should say, the penalty area, and the keeper stops the ball, okay. A legal right to stop. Then guess what? We're not going to sanction that encroachment, even though it was encroachment in the penalty area. That's what USSF has gone to IFAB, and so that's the changes for Law 14. And again, that'll be one of those things that we'll have to spread the word to the referees to make sure the referees understand that concept. But that's what the IFAB is going forward with. So we'll enact that this year also. So next slide, please. The problems we've had from from the past is sideline seating. We are with ASA again this year, and ASA's got a pretty good chart out there. You'll see it right there. The emphasis here is when you have ARs, okay, or for that matter, a home team or visiting team, the home team is always going to set up, as it says there, home team is going to take the south or the east sideline. And in fact, they will sit up so that there's no spectators behind the assistant referee. That's when we have 3 referee games. In other words, U11s and above, the home team will be the south or the east side based on the field, and the away team will be on the north or the west side. If we just have one referee for the U9, U10 games, then we expect that the away team would take the basic north or west side, and the home team would take the south or east side. That way it keeps everybody separate, and we don't have parents having discussions or problems with what's going on on the field of play. So we are going to be pretty strict about that to try to maintain some semblance of order, if you will, throughout the day. So sideline seating will be adhered to, and this will be in the coaches pamphlet, as well as it'll be on the website prior to the season starting. A concept that we've talked about, we actually did this a couple years ago, and I want to go ahead and revisit this. That's going to be a silent Saturday. What that basically is, one Saturday during the first half, i.e. before the Christmas break or the holiday break, and one Saturday after that, we will have parents can come to the field. They can sit there and they can clap all they want, but they cannot voice their displeasure with calls, voice their displeasure with their players. They can't tell their kids what to do. The kids get to go out there and listen to the coach and only the coach. So the coach has the right to talk to his players, but other than that, parents just sit there and watch and applaud the game. So again, we'll talk about that at the board meeting that's coming this next month. From that standpoint, you go back, please. One problem, and Charlie McCabe's going to talk about this soon, but we're going to enforce zero tolerance this year. There will not be sideline misbehavior on behalf of the parents and the coaches. They won't be tolerated. We lose too many good referees. We lose too many kids that want to be referees, and yet I'm not going to come out and do that again. We pay referees, yes. They're not professionals though. They're learning just like coaches learn, just like players learn. So are they going to make mistakes? Yes, they're going to make mistakes. So there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with those mistakes. But the fact is, we're not going to allow for parents to berate referees. Not going to allow coaches to berate referees. If that happens, we're just going to throw them out of the game, and they need to work through that. So, as always, I'd like to hear feedback, either good points or bad points with respect to referee performance. And yes, Cheryl, and in fact, racial slurs and comments, statements, if we hear them, okay? That's the way, it's always been that way, okay? But contact me if you have good points or bad points. Most of you know me already. I'll list my email address, my phone number. I take texts. I'm always available on game day Saturdays to deal with issues that come up on a as need basis. But that's my info from the referee perspective as referee commissioner. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Larry. Next, I would like to introduce Charlie McCabe. He is the Vice President of Competition for PCJSL, and he's going to kind of start us off on game day stuff, leading us into scheduling. He's also in charge of those of us that are on the scheduling committee. So, Charlie, take it away.
Thank you, Scott. And I'd like to just start out with thanking the coaches that have come to the meeting last night and tonight. We appreciate your participation, and also a word of thanks to Scott and the other board members for setting up these meetings. I think it's a great idea for getting everybody on the same page. We've all been working very hard in preparation for this season to make it run smoothly. Next slide, please, Scott. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk about coaching and why we're participating in this activity. We all think soccer is a fantastic thing to be involved with for young people, and to improve that generally, I've got a few suggestions. And what prompts this is the two things you see on this slide. The first problem is that participation in youth sports, including soccer, has either flatlined or is decreasing. And so we want to make sure that every kid that we engage with is welcome, is enjoying the experience, and stays with it. It's especially true of older high school age players that drop out. And we've got to make sure, whether they're recreational players or highly competitive players, that they're getting the experience that they deserve. The second thing is, and of course Larry touched on it, we've had a difficult time finding enough referees and quality referees. And the primary reason for that is the mistreatment of referees by coaches, parents, players, just disrespectful behavior that makes them uncomfortable or unwilling to continue with that. And it's especially true of young referees who get their license and step out there on the field and start refereeing, and then find out they just don't like the abuse. So if you're unhappy with the refereeing that you're seeing, or you have games canceled for referee because of lack of referees, so the solution for that is to make sure that you're modeling the behavior that you want your players and parents, any spectators, to observe, and make sure that you're being respectful of the referees, no matter how bad the calls are. We're all competitive people. That's why we engage in soccer. Competition is great for young people, but let's keep it in perspective. Next slide, please. The Arizona Soccer Association does have information on their website about what's considered appropriate behavior. I have a link there that you can go back and reference if you need to. But clearly, sportsmanship is a priority. I mean, aside from the health and safety of our players, sportsmanship is right up there with the other qualities that are essential to us providing the environment that we need for our players. Next slide, please. So along with just general conduct, it's also worth mentioning that we want to create a welcoming environment for players of all stripes, whether it's race, sex, religion, place of origin, sexual orientation, class, parents' marital status, whatever it is. Make sure that you're creating a welcoming environment so the kids come back, that they continue to participate in this wonderful activity that we're all engaged in. And again, this is part of the policy of the Arizona Soccer Association. Next slide, please. A few specific suggestions, and I'm not going to go through, read all of these. You can do that as I'm speaking or at your leisure, or go back later if you're want to get them word for word. But just a couple, again, suggestions. One is, at the very beginning of your season, have a meeting with your players and parents and emphasize how critical it is that they refrain from criticizing anyone, even their own kid, whether it's coaches or players on the other team, engaging with the referee or spectators or supporters for the other team. Any of that negative activity. Again, we want to model the behavior that we want our kids to assume. As has already been mentioned, any negative, consistent negative behavior will be dealt with severely by referees. And getting back to the health and safety thing, another point of emphasis is head injuries. If you have any inkling that your player is suffering from a head injury, you need to remove them from the game or practice, and they cannot come back and participate until they've been evaluated by a medical professional a physician or physician's assistant or DO, and they have to give you a note that they are cleared to practice or play again. It's not something you want to mess around with. And again, there's more information about this and the forms you need on the ASA website. So just the final thing, let's keep things in perspective that we want to create exciting, competitive environments, but in the end, it's just soccer. Thanks very much, Scott. I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate that. At this point now, we're going to go into the scheduling part of our presentation. The scheduling team is Angela Moore, Matt Marcus, and myself. Matt's going to get us started talking a little bit about the dates and everything. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat there, and we will address everybody's questions. We'll go through them one by one at the very end of the presentation, so we'll make sure to get everybody's questions answered. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thanks everybody for attending. We hope this is informative for everybody, but I work on the scheduling team at PCJSL with Scott and Angela. Like Scott said, if any of you guys have any questions going through, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of the three of us. We will be happy to assist you guys. This first slide includes the play dates for both U15 to U19 and U9 to 15 for the second session. We know we had a unprecedented number of rain out dates last year. We're hoping to not have that this year. I know that was tough for everybody trying to get the games played, but hopefully we don't have to incur that this year. But we're trying to keep a weather makeup date in there just in case that comes up. Most of you that started to register probably noticed that you've only got one blackout date. We'll get into some of the stuff that pertains to those a little bit later on. We just want to make sure that you guys are aware of the play dates and aware of what's coming. The next slide. This next slide deals with promotion and relegation. Just some of the things I know that come up when we're starting to flight teams. If your team finishes the previous session in the top two spots in your bracket, you'll be promoted to the next division up. So if you placed in the first or second place in silver, you're going to bump up to gold. If you are in bronze first or second, you're going to bump up to silver. We get a lot of questions about kids returning, how many kids on the team for flighting, and get into those portions of it. The only thing we're going to utilize when we're doing that stuff is we're going to utilize the data. We'll get into that a little bit more. Second part of this is if your team finishes in the bottom two spots, you'll automatically be relegated down to the next level. Of course, there's always exceptions. If your team adds great players, or if you want to challenge your team and you want to request to play up, please do that. We'll do our best to accommodate that. I know we'll get more into it, but one of the things that happens every season is we have 2 teams that request gold, 2 that request silver, and 30 that request bronze. So our job is to ensure that we've got balanced flights. We're going to try and balance the flights out as best as possible based upon the prior season's results. Just if you've got questions or things, please reach out, but we cannot go through and check each roster for new players. It's just not possible with 200 plus teams. So next slide. This pertains to the game cards. It's the same as last season. 2 teams, everybody must bring 2 copies of the game card to the game. Make sure to fill out the uniform numbers in GOT Sports so the referee doesn't have to write that in. There's no handwriting of players on the card unless you reach out to Scott, myself, or Angela and your registrar, and we try to get them onto the GOT Sport. And for some reason they can't. We will have to notify Larry, who will let the referees know, hey, this has been approved and somebody knows about it. Biggest thing is not emailing us Friday night at midnight before the game is and saying, hey, oh my gosh, I need help. Please check your rosters. Make sure your game cards and your match cards are appropriate before Friday. On here, we're listing Wednesday. That way, if there is some issue or something that we have to correct in GOT Sport or with your roster, it gives us time to sufficiently do that. Next slide. This is the process for after matchups have been created. We will send out the matchups once they've been created, and we will give you a window of time to view your schedule. These games will just be held on dates. They will not have times or fields, only the date of the game. At that point, if you have a conflict, just please cancel the game. If you do decide to cancel the game, it is your responsibility to work with your opponent to get that rescheduled. I know we've sent it in multiple emails, but we don't have access to fields midweek for games. So you'll have to either play on a field that you can provide that's within the system that we can use to schedule the game, and make sure that you reach out to your opponents to try and get with them through the GOT Sport. Any of the games that you cancel within this window do not incur any fines. Any games that get canceled after that window closed must first go through your club appointed representative for approval. There will be a list of all of those approved representatives from each club, and fines will apply after that window has closed. Go ahead, Scott. After you cancel or you review your schedule and decide to cancel a game, you need to make sure that you fill out a form. The form will be provided. We're going to post links on the website that have all of those in there. That email or that form will automatically generate an email to all of the appropriate scheduling people and the teams involved. And that game will get moved to a holding date, most likely August 31st. If anything changes with the holding date, we'll make sure to email everybody that's involved in the GOT Sport event and make sure that we let everyone know. Those games will then be listed with a ribbon that says postponed, and we will make sure that we do what we can after that. Go ahead, Scott. This goes over the fines of cancellations after the window has closed. This fine structure has been approved by the PCJSL board. It lists out the first violation, the second violation, and the third violation, as well as the length of when it happens. One of the things we've been asked with these new fine structures is what happens if there's an emergency? Something happens that's outside of the confines. The board is not trying to not allow people and just be, rude and nasty. Just let us know. We're going to take those things into consideration if they happen. But we're trying to square it up to where we're getting all of the games played and it's happening in a fashion where it's not hurting other teams. Not everybody realizes sometimes we have teams that travel from out of town to play within our league. And when that game gets canceled or someone no-shows, they've driven all that way and they didn't get the opportunity to play. So it doesn't just affect your team, it affects other teams involved as well. So next one. How to reschedule a canceled game. After your game gets moved onto the holding date, which right now we're saying is 8/31, you will need to reach out to your opponent to reschedule that game. As I said earlier, please utilize the chat function in GOT Sport. We cannot see if you're emailing the other team. Touched on this last night in the other meeting. We've had it happen before where a team says, all right, we're good to play the game. Scott and I will go through and put that game on the schedule, get refs set up, and then the other team doesn't show. Then the other team reaches out to us and says, we had no idea we had a game. Nobody let us know. Nobody asked us if we were good to play there. So if you utilize the GOT Sport chat feature, I can see that, Scott can see it, and so can Angela. Then we're able to communicate in there to make sure that everything is agreed upon between both teams, and then we can get that game rescheduled. It just makes stuff so much easier, and we're not trying to chase anything down. But once you've secured a date, time, and field with your opponent, then you will go through and print out or submit a reschedule form. And that will allow us, all of the appropriate people, Scott, myself, and Angela, to get the referees scheduled, get the game onto a field, and get everything going. But you've got to allow us an appropriate amount of time. Right now, we're asking for 10 days to be able to secure the refs and make sure that everything is done in accordance to have everything scheduled and everybody show up to play. Go ahead, Scott.
All right, I think I'm going to jump in here for this one. So I've had some conversations with GOT Sport. Last year, we had a lot of trouble trying to get players added onto rosters, and they were very adamant about some of the definitions that we use. It seems like here locally and in most of Arizona, a club pass player is considered to be somebody who is in your club that is playing on, a team in your club. Obviously, you don't need any paperwork for that. And a guest player is somebody from outside your club that is going to come and guest play in a team on your club, and you have to have the paperwork. Godsport doesn't recognize it like that. So in Godsport, a club pass player is considered somebody who is registered in the event already. So for instance, if you have a 2012 girls team and you have two of those in the same club, they're both registered in PCJSL, then a player from team A can play on team B. You just add them to the roster as a club pass player, but it's one of the ones that you're allowed to use, and that's all there is to it. If you have a guest pass player, Godsport considers that to be any player that's outside the event. For instance, if you have, say, a 2012 State League 2 player that's going to play on a 2011 PCJSL team, then that means that player is not inside the PCJSL event, so they will have to go and apply in the guest player pool. The guest player pool link is available currently right now on the website for PCJSL. There is a page there with all the season information, and we're going to try to make sure that stays up there for the entire season because there's a lot of good information there. There's information there that will tell you how to add players to your roster, help links from Godsport for any issues you have. And of course, at the end of the day, if you can't get it figured out, you can always email Matt, myself, or Angela. So with us moving away from US Club and moving into ASA, the board voted in December to make some adjustments to the way we've been doing things. Since COVID, there was a lot of willingness to kind of look the other way for things, just in the whole point of trying to get the kids to play post-COVID. We're trying to rein that in a little bit now and try to get some more transparency and equality, I guess, so to speak, and fairness into what's going on. So we're really going to be following the ASA rules that they kind of use for their league. And one of them is players may only be listed as a primary player on one team in the league. And the other thing is that each team is only allowed to have 5 club pass or guest players maximum for each game. So for instance, if you have 8 players and you're playing in 11v11, you can use 5 players, and it doesn't matter where they come from, 5 is the max. So you can use it. The one change and the difference between us and ASA is that we allow guest players from outside the club to play in the league. I know we allow that for tournaments a lot, but it doesn't usually happen within leagues. So, but there is a 5-player limit, and you know that should help everybody be a little bit more consistent. This I just kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Advanced league players are allowed to play on PCJSL teams. ASA's rules that they don't want players playing down in leagues in the same age group that they are in. So for instance, if a 2012 player plays and is registered on a ASA team, then they cannot come and play in a 2012 age group in PCJSL. They would have to play on a 2011 team in PCJSL. Matt, you want to finish this one up?
Yep, we understand sometimes mismatches happen. I know I talked on it earlier. One of the things that we do is we go off of the data from the previous season, so that's what builds the flighting. Sometimes mismatches occur, happens. All of us have been in a position where we've either been on the side handing it out or the side receiving it of a 8-0 game or more. Both coaches can agree that the game will be complete, and whatever the score is at halftime will be the final score that is entered. With an 8-goal differential, both coaches must agree to continue playing. If both coaches agree the game will continue upon completion, or one coach wants to stop it. If the game stops early, whatever the score is at that time will be the final score that is entered. We did have a couple people last night ask who is responsible for entering the scores. It's a great time, team managers and coaches. That PIN number and the score entering is on the top of every match card. That is where you go to enter the score. That's what allows us to be able to move on. We did set it up in the last session of PCJSL where it automatically generated emails. I know it was annoying because unfortunately some of the rainout games, it didn't allow for the system to know that. All Godsport saw at that point was there was a game that didn't have a score. So please bear with us. If a game is canceled due to rain, just let us know. If a game is canceled due to something that we're unaware of, just send myself, Scott, or Angela an email. We'll make sure to take care of this. Biggest emphasis here is knowing where we're playing and what the space we're occupying. This is recreational soccer. We need to be cognizant of, as Charlie said and Larry said, making kids fall in love with the game. We don't want to discourage kids from playing soccer and falling in love with this game where they'll play for the entire life or the future coaches of this game. So the next slide.
But
Larry.
will you go back to that for a second? So what referees are hopeful of is that when a coach sees that he's clearly overmatched or undermatched, that they will make the appropriate, move so that you don't have the same kids scoring 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 goals. So move, coaches can do this sort of thing and keep the, keep the game at the point where kids can enjoy the game and not go away and go, man, I don't want to get beat 19-0 again, or even, even 8-0. So again, when coaches move your teams around, move your players around, do something creative, because referees are going to ask the question, but we were hopeful that the coach before that time has done something to make it a more creative game for his kids. Pass the ball. You got to have 10 touches before you can go score a goal. You can only score a goal. There's all kinds of different techniques out there. I don't want to get to them, but the fact of the matter is that's what referees are hoping. I go out there to referee a game. I want to referee a whole game. I mean, that's just the way it is. So don't think the referee's out there trying to complete the game and it's ain't nothing. It's going to be over. No, it's not. The coach want to play. We're going to play soccer. So just help the referees out from that standpoint and be creative, coaches. Thanks.
All right. So at this point, that is the end of our presentation. So I want to say thank you to everybody for coming in, and hopefully this was an informative meeting. I will make sure that this video itself, as well as the PowerPoint that we presented, will both be listed on the website so that you can refer back to it. And again, if you have questions, you can always reach out to any of us on the board, or Angela, myself, or Matt if it's related to scheduling. If you have any questions right now, please type them in the chat. If you do not have any questions, feel free to go ahead and take off. And we'll stay here to answer the questions that do pop up for as many of you that want to ask questions.